The Green Bay Packers make their first big edition of the offseason, both literally and metaphorically speaking, with defensive tackle Jarran Reed from the Kansas City Chiefs. How does this change the Packers' defense and the rest of their offseason? That's coming up.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. You can follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen of the day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. The Packers have beefed up their defensive interior with Kansas City Chiefs defensive lineman Jarran Reed. And he was a longtime Seattle Seahawk. Reed goes to Kansas City, meant to beef up their interior along with Chris Jones. And I would say was somewhat disappointing in Kansas City after having a 10.5 sack season a few years ago, a 6.5 sack season to go along with that. He can get after the passer. I want to get to all of the ways that this impacts the Packers on the football field, but I just don't think we can really dig into all of that without first addressing that he was also suspended 6 games for an alleged domestic violence situation. He was alleged to have assaulted a woman, and the police were called. They came, and insufficient evidence was found to charge him in that case. But if you look at the police report, some of the details in it are ugly, and it is a bad situation for him to have been in. It is conflicting, I think, if you're a Packers fan who cares about such things, who cares about the kind of people who are on your team, and you hope that this does not reflect his character, that it reflects solely a singular mistake. That is the best case scenario. And you hope that it is whatever happened is behind him and that he will be a model citizen moving forward, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that is important context. And there were some Packer fans who were annoyed that that's how I started my analysis after, by the way, I said, he's a good football player. This is a good football player. But if you're going to celebrate all the good stuff, I think we need to have some context here and understand the full picture. Okay. As a pass rusher, this is a different kind of player than the Packers have had at this position in a long time. In fact, this is not just as a pass rusher. This is the best interior defender the Packers have had next to Kenny Clark since Mike Daniels. And he had 12 quarterback hits for the Chiefs last year. Doesn't seem like a ton. Kenny Clark had 13. Okay? His 12 quarterback hits last year would have been more than any Packers defensive tackle, not named Kenny Clark, since Mike Daniels in 2017. His 12 quarterback hits on the Chiefs would have tied him for the most on the 2018 Packers. And his best games last year came in the playoffs. He started off very slowly, did not play well at all for the first 8 to 10 games, and then really came on strong toward the end of the season and was excellent in the postseason. Really good against the Bills and borderline dominant against the Chiefs. And yes, the Chiefs are against the Bengals for the Chiefs. The Bengals have maybe the worst interior offensive line in football. So, that's not everything in his evaluation, but if you're a good player, you should beat the crap out of bad offensive linemen. And Green Bay has not had other guys around Kenny Clark who could do that, who could just beat the man in front of them consistently one-on-one, who could take on blocks, who could rush the passer. He was good run and pass in that game. And you say, okay, well, bad interior offensive line. Okay, this is the biggest game of their season. And if you just watch that game, you'd say this is one of the 10 best interior defensive linemen in the league. Like, that's how good he was in that game. That's not hyperbole. I just watched the all 22 of it. It was really, really good. He's not that player down to down, play to play, but he doesn't need to be a virtuoso. He doesn't need to be John Randall or Warren Sapp in their primes. He doesn't need to be Aaron Donald. Be solid, open things up for Kenny Clark. He can play on the nose. He can play 0. He can play 1. He can play 3. He can play any of those interior spots. He can eat up blocks in the run game. Now, he doesn't always, I think, play with consistent effort. But if you're going to tune him up and let him rush the passer, he can beat guards. He can beat centers. He's got quickness. He's got strong hands, good hands, and he can finish. He will chase down the line of scrimmage on running backs. He can be an impact defensive lineman for this Packers team. I understand that the PFF pass rush grades aren't great. The productivity is what it is. At a certain point, you have to start looking at the outcomes. And I'm a process over outcomes guy, which is why I like the PFF grades. But all he's done is be a productive pass rusher essentially for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, at a certain point, the production speaks for itself. And you can say, oh, the PFF grades. Okay, but he's hitting quarterbacks. He's taking down quarterbacks. He's making plays in the backfield. Let's just have some context here. He's better than Tyler Lancaster. He's better than Kingsley Keke. He's better than Dean Lowry. And now Dean Lowry had a pretty good season last year. But Jarran Reed is, I think, overall a better player and is more likely to continue to be good. I think he's better at things that the Packers need. And I think there's still some juice left. So it's only a 1-year deal. He's 29 years old, so he's not, certainly in his physical prime by any means. But if you go back to the 2020 season, it's not that long ago, he had 6.5 sacks. 6.5 sacks. And that team, you could excuse if you go, okay, well, but he's getting all these one-on-one blocks. No, that Seattle team did not have a bunch of other great pass rushers on it. That 2018 team, it's not like that had Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill and all these guys flying off the edge. That was not some loaded Seahawks team. And he had 24 QB hits that season. That is a metric ton for an interior defensive lineman. And although he only had 2.5 sacks last year, he had, as I said, 12 quarterback hits. That is a good season. Another important part of his appeal for the Packers. He's going to play. Assuming that ugliness is behind him, and we can't fully assume those things. You hope it is. Then he has only missed 2 other games other than the 6 he was suspended for. So it's a little bit of other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? But other than that, 2 games in his career he's missed. He's going to be out there. He's going to play snaps for you. And if you get, I thought TJ Slayton showed a lot last season. Looks like Dean Lowry is going to be on this team. That interior defensive front is all of a sudden looking more like a strength, certainly more like a strength than it was a year ago. Now, I don't want to say it is currently a strength full stop. But I think on the scale of strength versus weakness, I think we have to put it more on the strength side at this point. He makes this team better. And if you look at the moves that the Packers have made this offseason, they have been focused on this defense. Rasul Douglas, Devondre Campbell, and now Jarran Reed. Those are, and you kept Adrian Amos, adding void years, making it easier. You kept Dean Lowry rather than restructuring or cutting him. Now, they moved on from Zadarius Smith, who gets a contract in Minnesota, but you have the replacement there with Rashawn Gary. You extend Preston Smith. They took the steps to make sure this defense is solidified. Now, I don't think we need to take sweeping generalizations out of that focus and then, juxtapose it with what happened with Davante Adams. I think the Davante Adams piece is separate and apart from what happened defensively, but Green Bay has said, clearly signaled, we think it's really important to maximize this defense because you might get in a game where you only score one offensive touchdown in a playoff game. And you might have to win a game with 10 points. So how do you do that? How do you put yourself in the best position to do that? Well, you make sure your defense is rock damn solid. And that's what a move like this does. How does it affect the rest of their offseason? We're going to talk about that right after this. Today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. You've heard me say it over and over. And it's not just the classic, although the classic, everyone loves a classic. The classics are terrific. Now they have the puffs with protein-infused marshmallows. Just think about that for a second. Protein-infused marshmallow. They're low in calorie, high in protein, high in fiber, low in net carbs. These things are magic. They're magic. They shouldn't exist, and yet they do. And not only do they taste delicious. And if you don't believe me, go to BuiltBar.com and see for yourself. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL, where Locked On experts are covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available on all platforms. This Reed move has a trickle-down effect for the Packers. Because I think if you had, certainly pre-Davante Adams trade, if you had looked at this roster, you would have said one of the places where they can stand to upgrade in a meaningful way is that defensive line. It's why I was looking at guys like Travis Jones and going, oh no, that guy could actually come in, start, and be really impactful for this team. Well, now you have Jarran Reed, and you have that spot taken care of. And he was playing real, meaningful snaps for the Chiefs. So when you take that into account, I think that can really bring it down on the priorities of your team. He played 64% of snaps last year. He played 74% of snaps the year before. I mean, he has never played the last time that Jarran Reed has played under 60% of defensive snaps was his rookie season back in 2016, and he only started 6 games. He played 70% of defensive snaps in a season where he only started 10 games. And that last season in Seattle, he played 74% of snaps. 3 out of every 4 snaps. And most of those are on third down in obvious passing situations. He can give you pass rush juice on early downs, which the Packers need, and on third and medium or third and shortish, third and medium, those like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5s where it could be run, could be pass. He can be out there and you can feel good that he is matched up on a guard or he is matched up on a center. That, I think, snaps into focus a little bit more clearly the other needs on this team. And look, receiver, duh, right? Duh. But now, where else other than receiver? Defensive line was, I think, the only other place where you felt like they really had a chance to bring in a starter in the draft, someone who could come in right away and give them a bunch of reps. And, I said maybe if Russell Douglas is not back, there was a corner that they could do that with, or a safety, and you move Darnell Savage into the slot. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen now. Now, I do think a nickel safety is still something of a need. They don't have that guy. Henry Black was not even tendered. So could someone like Daxton Hill, who we're already getting buzz, University of Michigan defensive back, could he be a corner? Well, if he's a safety who could be a corner, isn't he the perfect nickel safety? Someone who could play in the slot, someone who could play deep, someone who you could have cover tight ends and do a little bit of everything? Seems like the perfect Packers type. And now you have these extra picks. Now you can take defensive line and you can just wait, because they could still stand to add some beef. You can always stand to add some beef, but they can just wait until day 3 because they've got it. They've got a nice rotation now. They go 4-ish deep. Add somebody on day 3, and that's a really nice rotation. Like I said, Jarran Reed does not miss games. And then you have Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry, and TJ Slayton. And then whatever else you want to add. So that makes it easier to say, okay, well, this nickel safety spot, which may only play 40, 50, maybe 60% of snaps, but that seems like way too many. Probably 30, 40, somewhere in that range. That guy, maybe a little bit more of a priority. I think edge rusher. Now you're talking about a third edge rusher, but this pass rush was devastating against the 49ers when they had 3 guys. And Zadarius Smith didn't play that many snaps. But when all those guys were out there, the 49ers could not block them. Now, they could re-sign Whitney Merciless, and that goes a long way. And that is, someone coming off a serious injury who was busting his butt to come back. You would think after all of the years spent in Houston, not contending for Super Bowls, that he would want to be in a place where he could do that and be in a place that wanted him. And this is a good edge draft. Now, all of a sudden, maybe you push that need up a little bit into the second round. If someone falls to you in the first round, maybe you're a little bit more gung-ho about taking that player. It just by eliminating a position of need or reducing the degree to which it becomes a need, you are easing the tiebreakers that your front office can use. Because let's say the Packers were looking at 2 players at the 28th pick. It's Travis Jones and, the edge rushers are at the end of the first are not really there. You can go in the second round, but let's just imagine a defensive lineman and an edge player at any spot. You could make the case, and I have always said that the player, it's not just best player available, it's the player who could most impact your team over the course of their rookie contract. And so you could make the case that a defensive lineman who starts and plays 70% of snaps, like Jarran Reed, is more impactful than a secondary pass rusher who's going to play 30, 40% of snaps, assuming no injuries. And Preston Smith has been extremely durable in his career. So has Rashawn Gary, though to a lesser extent. A defensive lineman who is a force multiplier for someone like Kenny Clark, who is a force multiplier for everyone else. That's the other thing about Jarran Reed is if he's getting single blocked, then you have to double one other guy. But you might want to double Kenny Clark. You might want to double Rashawn Gary, and now you've got Reed singled up. You've got Preston Smith singled up. It is defensive linemen. That's the great thing about adding talent is they're force multipliers. Because the more attention you need to pay to one, the less attention you can pay to the other guys, and that makes it easier for them to create. It's why when you go to these 5-man looks, you're giving yourself a chance to get these one-on-ones, to just game up one-on-ones. It's not always about free rushers. It's about finding ways to get one-on-ones. And if you have guys who can win one-on-one and Reed can win one-on-one, that makes you better. So we know what the receiver need looks like, and we know that that's going to be a priority in the draft. Reducing defensive tackle, I think, elevates edge because that was a secondary need. Because you're talking about edge 3. I think it elevates tackle, although I think Elgton Jenkins is going to play tackle, and so maybe you feel really good about where they are. Maybe you're going to get a guard. This is why I'm so into a Zion Johnson situation. Although I don't think you need to spend first-round capital on a player who may not start. They like Royce Newman a lot. I think there's a lot of potential there. But if you can get a player as good as Zion, you just say, nah, that guy. I want that guy. Royce Newman can be a swing interior offensive lineman, day 3 pick, and swing tackle. He played some tackle in training camp last year. He's already, to some degree, cross-trained. And then you have Yash Nijman. You have Royce Newman. Now you go 7-8 deep, and you upgraded one of those spots by bringing in an elite offensive lineman. I like that. It's going to depend. We don't know yet what their plan is on offensive line. And so we're going to have to figure that part out as we go. And I think there'll be a signal if they do take a guard that Elgton Jenkins is moving to tackle. I think that's probably pretty likely. So adjust your mocks accordingly, right? Adjust your mocks accordingly. There are a lot of Packer fans who were desperate for defensive linemen. I don't think you need to pine over Jordan Davis anymore. For as talented as I think Jordan Davis is, I was going outside my norms and saying, bring me a defensive lineman, even if it's in the first round. And that was when they only had one first-round pick. Now, that was also before they traded Devontae Adams. Not doing that now. And so it eases the burden on you to attack need and allows you to say, okay, here are the luxury picks. The third safety, the third pass rusher, the swing tackle. Those are the things, and the swing interior offensive lineman or an offensive lineman who could start, but worst case, you're getting those kinds of things. Those are the positions on this team, again, outside of receiver, that this team needs to address. There's not a high-end tight end talent. You can get an athlete on day 3 and just go. This was, I think, one of the only other big needs that this team had, where if you took a good player, they were going to start. One less of those, that's really useful in building your team, because now outside of receiver, you can mostly just go best player available and prioritize the premium positions such that you have them. That's a really good position for this team to be in. It's just that the hole that they currently face at receiver is a pretty big one. It's a pretty big one. I want to talk about the draft a little bit more, but I'm going to put a cap on our conversation from yesterday on the receiver discussion in the draft. We're going to do that in just a second. Our next partner has a product that I use every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because I was really bad about taking my vitamins, number one. And number two, the morning is the best time for me to prioritize my health, because I'm thinking about, okay, I need to drink water, I need to get my coffee, and I need to protect my stomach too. Gut health is something that I have always had issues with, and this is something that has worked for me. I take it every morning, and it's become part of my daily routine. They give you 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. They help you support your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your recovery, your focus, your aging, all of those things. I have to say, I think my skin looks better. I can feel the difference. You know how you can feel your body when you feel good and when you feel sluggish. I can tell a difference after just a couple weeks taking Athletic Greens. And to make it easy for you to try it, you can reclaim your health and your immune system with daily nutrition. That's it. It's all in one place. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL network. Again, this is athleticgreens.com/NFL network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. This was something I was thinking about as I was putting together my articles for this week. I have a piece coming out tomorrow. Today. We're recording this late on Tuesday night. That comes out on The Leap on Wednesday, talking about Packers types. And as I said the other day, I'm not going to preempt it, but we go through the physical profiles of guys who fit the Packers' preferred types at receiver. I think it's also important to think about complementary skill sets. The Packers have thought about this over the years, especially with Matt LaFleur, but I think this roster was put together very intentionally. You had your alpha number one. You had your speed receiver in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You had a possession type blocker, versatile, potential power slot. And then you added your more traditional slot, run after catch, kind of middle of the field guy. First, Amari Rodgers in the draft, and then Randall Cobb later via trade and via borderline coercion to do that. I think Matt LaFleur, and he has said this, looks at this receiver room like a basketball team. So what are the complementary skill set players in this draft? If you're going to get a speed guy, if you're going to go get a Chris Olave, it would be great to get another guy who could make plays after the catch. If you're going to go get a Treylon Burks, who is a run after catch guy, but who is raw, then it'd be really nice to get someone polished to go along with him. If you're going to get a smaller guy, Packers don't draft small guys, but if you're going to get a smaller guy, it'd be nice to get a bigger guy as well. If you're going to take Christian Watson, who's extremely raw, it would be nice to get someone a little bit more polished as well. And then this is also connected to a potential trade or signing. If you get Will Fuller or you get Julio Jones, who best complements them? Now, if you have the option to pick someone who you think can be a true alpha number one, or you have a chance to trade for that guy, then you just do it. But if you get Will Fuller and you have, let's say you have two receivers pretty similar. Like, for example, I have Chris Olave and Drake London and Treylon Burks all pretty close in my rankings. They're all within, essentially the same tier. And so if you get Will Fuller, maybe you want a bigger body. You get the speed, maybe you want the run after catch guy in Treylon Burks. If you get Julio Jones, who doesn't have that take the top off speed anymore, maybe that makes you the tiebreaker, as like we talked about last segment, could go to someone like Chris Olave. And then if you're able to make a trade for a frontline player, let's say you get Tyler Lockett, well, that guy can come and be the fulcrum of your offense right away. So now maybe that makes you feel a little bit better about going out and getting some more raw receivers who have that high upside. The Christian Watsons, the George Pickens, those, even the Treylon Burks, even though he's not the same athletic profile, he has a ton of physical traits on tape. And you can bring those guys a little bit more slowly because you feel good about Lazard and Cobb and Rodgers, Big Bob Tunyon back, your run game, and now your defense. That you can bring some of these guys a little more slowly along. Chris Olave is the most polished guy I think in the draft, period, full stop. But maybe you don't, if you get a Tyler Lockett, is Chris Olave the perfect complement to him? Or would you rather have someone who's got a little bit more size, a little bit more physicality, a little bit more run after catch? To me, Treylon Burks makes more sense opposite Tyler Lockett. I happen to just like Burks better than Olave, but it's close. It's really close. And so this goes back to this notion of the player who's going to make the biggest impact on your team over the course of their rookie deal. You don't want to pick them just for year one, but this is a small window. So we're talking about year 1, year 2, year 3. This is now. So I think you care a little bit more when you're talking about rookie and rookie because you want them to immediately impact. And again, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit because you don't want just year 1 impact. But you're talking about building a team, building a basketball team. You need a point guard, shooting guard, power forward, et cetera, et cetera. I think finding complementary types, if you can, because even in the year they drafted 3 receivers, MVS was clearly the take the top off guy. EQ had speed, but he was someone who could work the middle of the field, who could play that power slot, as Nate Tice calls it, and could make plays after the catch with explosiveness and physicality. And Jamon Moore was a route runner type. He was someone who was gonna beat you on 3rd and 6. He was gonna get you 8 because he was gonna beat the corner with route running, with his foot quickness. Now that didn't turn out to be the case, but that was his profile. They got 3 different kinds of guys, even if they were all good athletes, productive in college, et cetera, et cetera. So the complementary skill set thing is something that I think I just wanted to flag as we move forward here and we see what the Packers are going to do at the position. Please go read the piece that I put up at the Leap. It is free to try, 7-day trial. Go and check it out. See if you like it. Some great stuff there this week. I'm doing a deep dive on the Packers receiver position. So go check that out. The NFL draft receiver position and their types and the guys that they might be targeting. Something we are going to talk about on this show a whole bunch. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked On Packers fan hotline, you can do that, 920-341-3775 to stay Locked On Packers.